Hello and welcome to the Beyond Biotech podcast number 111. I'm Jim Cornell and this is the weekly podcast from Labiotech. And the subject for us this week is the Estonian National Biobank, which uses genetic data to create a picture of the Estonian population. The biobank has samples from 20% of the adult population. In comparison, UK biobanks only represent 0.7% of the population. So, with so much data, Estonia can determine risk factors for cancer, cardiovascular disease, mental and reproductive health, informing health investments to improve patient outcomes. Earlier this year, the Estonian Biobank announced the next phase of its European Commission-funded project in collaboration with sequencing company PacBio. This week on the podcast, we have two guests, Professor Lily Milani, head of the Estonian National Biobank, and Neil Ward, VP of EMEA at PacBio. And so the first thing we need to do is find out exactly what the Estonian National Biobank is.
The Estonian Biobank is a volunteer-based biobank of right now about 210,000 participants, and that's close to 20% of the Estonian adult population. So it's been collected for research purposes, basically research in human genetics and health, medical research. All biobank participants have consented to genotyping or genetic analysis and updating of their electronic health records and health-related data from different national registries and databases. So on a day-to-day basis, it's being used for research in human genetics and health in the medical field. And what makes us maybe different from other biobanks is that we also return results to biobank participants. So we first of all do like research projects where we return results. So invite people to participate in a study where we return results. And this has been like findings in breast cancer, cardiovascular findings, and also in some drug metabolism related traits. And then most recently we launched the Estonian Biobank participant portal, My Genome, where everyone was invited to come and see their results. And so far, 90,000 people have logged in, and there they could get some educational information, but also like their genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, pharmacogenetic reports, and some fun facts, including ancestry reports and caffeine metabolism and so on. I think people were super excited, and like it went viral on Estonian social media that sharing their Neanderthal percent and comparing with each other, and mostly like they would maybe have wanted slightly higher resolution on the ancestry reports, but it's hard to get with when you only have access to publicly available data on different ancestries. But still, people were happy, and they had Estonian resolution of how many distant relatives they had in different counties in Estonia and so on. So they were very happy.
Yeah, very interesting. I can imagine it would be a similar situation if the same kind of thing was happening in the UK. Everybody would be very excited to find out what their ancestry is. Yeah, so I guess we'll move over to Neil. Could you tell me a little bit about PacBio?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. We are a NASDAQ-listed biotechnology company, and we specialize in the manufacturing and generation of technology to look at DNA, essentially. Although that can take multiple different forms, so it can be straightforward DNA sequencing, but we use the same sort of technology to also look at the transcriptome, so the genes that are expressed in your genome, or even at the epigenome, the sort of interplay between genetics and your environment and how that may lead to chemical modification of your DNA after certain exposures. So yeah, we're California-based out of Menlo Park, which is in the Bay Area in San Francisco, but we've got a London office here in the UK and a fairly sizable European team that I'm responsible for. And it's a pleasure to be working with Lily and the Estonia team, utilizing our long DNA sequencing technology to hopefully accurately characterize the genomes of 10,000 individuals from the biobank. looking forward to finding all sorts of novel discoveries in that data that hasn't been possible before with previous technologies.
In terms of the biobank itself, you've kind of mentioned some of the reasons for it. What's the importance of, or some of the benefits of using genetic data to create a picture of the Estonian population?
So it's several fold. One of the key benefits is, of course, discovering and understanding the biological causes and mechanisms behind diseases, so we could find better treatments. And the other side that we are working with is also like, how could we actually use genetic information in the clinic to better prevent diseases or create more personalized disease prevention models and therapies. It definitely helps that we know the genetic predisposition of a person. Maybe they need to start screening programs earlier for breast cancer or even in cardiovascular disease. They should be under greater supervision by clinicians. And then related to pharmacogenetics, for example, people respond very differently to medicines. And there are many studies that have shown that using genetic information in prescribing antidepressants or cardiovascular medications has great benefit. So we could personalize treatments, tailor treatments, and one size doesn't really fit all in medicine for sure.
How do you decide what data that you're going to collect and how is it used?
So since the biobank is really set up for health-related research, what we integrate is anything that is related to health, also demographic data, educational level, and health behavior. So first of all, biobank participants fill in a questionnaire that is on demographic data and education they have completed, lifestyle regarding diet, smoking, physical activity, and then the diagnosis and medication use. All of the health-related data comes from national health databases. So in Estonia, we have a single-payer health insurance model like the NHS in the UK. And what is beyond that is that we also have one single database where all different healthcare providers have to submit all their electronic health records. So whether it's primary care or specialists or dentists, they all have to submit this into the same database. So that makes it easy for us to use the data for research. It's harmonized, it's easy to link to, and then update the health data of all the participants on an annual basis. And then we use this for research to make discoveries, associations between genetics and diseases or treatment outcomes or side effects from medications. And then we use that for testing whether using this information could be of benefit for public health or personalized therapy.
How do you safeguard individual privacy?
So on many levels. First of all, when the people are recruited, as soon as the data gets to the biobank, we separate the personal data from the sample and the health data. So basically all the personal data like name, ID code, contact information is stored in a room where there is no internet servers, no connection to the outer world, and only two people have access to the room. And then regarding the health data and the samples, everything is coded on many different levels. So we use different codes and different stages and different laboratory codes, research codes, and so on. So everything is pseudonymized. Then when data is used for research, they have to be stored in secure servers and do all authentication when you want to access the data and so on. So I think these are the different layers of security that we use.
There's been a few relatively high profile cases of hacking. So clearly you've got good security in place to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are working on it on a daily basis also to keep everything safe and up to date and be up to date also with the latest in data security.
It seems like it's a kind of a database that people use. Is it something that people will go into on a regular basis? Because I know that, I can imagine if something like that in the UK, you would put your information in, and that's probably the last you would ever use it. But it seems like it's really being utilized by the public.
We definitely built it in a way and hoping that it will be our way of communicating with biobank participants on a regular basis, so that they would be coming back and filling in new reports and updating their health records, or at least like their lifestyle factors and so on. And we also use the same platform for running questionnaires. So we have so far done a few additional questionnaires to the basic health questionnaire. So we have done a questionnaire on mental health. We've done a questionnaire on people could then report side effects from different medications and vaccines. It was just after the corona vaccinations took place, so people were very active in reporting these. And we've done personality questionnaires, since there's plenty of research on personality and health outcomes and genetics of personality and so on. So we have many different directions of research, and we try to keep very active contact with the biobank participants.
Is one of the pluses of this the ability perhaps to address disease earlier or prevent disease in the first place using, I guess, risk factors and genetics?
Yeah, exactly. So for us, it's twofold. One is just making these discoveries on a broader scale on the population level. So we have genotyped all biobank participants. So before this project, we had sequenced 3,000 genomes, and now we're about to sequence 10,000 additional genomes with PacBio. So what was important for us was really the quality of the data, so that we could actually use the data directly for recontacting participants with specific findings, so clinically relevant findings. This includes then both disease-associated risk variants, or then looking into drug response, novel variants that could influence drug response and so on. So we have done several different studies on this before. On the other hand, we're also using this long-read sequencing data to create better genotype imputation reference panel for the Estonian population, so that we can get better data out of the genotyped array samples as well.
I would imagine that through using a system like this, that there would be savings to the health system. Is that the case, and how much?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. Like, these cost effectiveness analyses are usually done on like a single disease or a single drug level. So unfortunately, there are no extensive studies on what is the benefit of just having a genome sequence at birth or at adult age, or when does it become cost effective. Because having the whole genome sequence of a person, we can pick out so much information from there. We can both pick out rare variants that are associated with breast cancer or familial hypercholesterolemia, and diseases that need early prevention and have definitely better health outcomes if doctors have this information. And pharmacogenetics on its own has been proven cost effective for several drugs, given a genetic test that costs around €300 for just one single drug and a single test and so on. So I think that we need to find ways of putting all of these analyses together. And if we just think of the fact that we only need to sequence the person's genome once, and then we have this data for so many different applications, it has to be cost effective, but there is no clear proof of that yet.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of potential, though, in that space, as you touched on. I think one of the exciting parts with the Estonia project in particular is that ability to provide that information back to the participants and then follow those individuals over time to see if it actually makes an impact. So if you give risk information about someone's predisposition to breast and ovarian cancer, can the government save money by having screening at different age profiles rather than just one age where we recall people for screening? Or does an information about someone's pharmacogenomics encourage them to adhere to the prescription that the pharmacy has actually given? Because many people don't. They take the drugs home and then pick and choose whether they take them. Lots and lots of different opportunities. We did a high-level analysis even just on a single pharmacogenomics gene here in the UK of how much cost savings the NHS could make on an annualized basis if it actually had genotype information around a gene called CYP2D6, which is involved in the metabolism of a significant proportion of all drugs. And even basic estimates of just ensuring that you don't give the drugs to people that don't metabolize them properly, as well as on the other side maybe overdosing. NHS could save tens of millions of pounds a year by having just information on one gene, let alone what it could do with a whole genome's worth of information. So I think there's a lot of potential, but as Lily says, I don't think anyone's yet taken that multitude of data in a sort of sensible analysis and really been able to cost it out.
Sure. And I guess there are so many intangibles there that it would be difficult to exactly quantify, but I know that with a lot of things, it's important to kind of show your worth so that, you keep getting government funding and all of those kinds of things, that the more that you come across as being valuable, the more longevity you have, I guess.
Absolutely. But I think governments are rightly concerned around additional costs that may be incurred once people have genomic information. So does that make the population a group of worried well people? Because we all have genomic variations that increase or decrease our predisposition to diseases or outcomes of taking particular drugs. And I think many healthcare systems will be worried that suddenly the general practitioners will be swamped with people once they've received that information, that they're worried about their particular health outcomes. I'm not sure we've necessarily observed that, but that's obviously a concern that healthcare systems have.
You were mentioning the fact that you have a certain portion of the Estonian population working with the National Biobank. Is there any plan or any strategy to increase that percentage?
Yes, we definitely want to expand. So especially now that we launched the Biobank portal, then there was great interest in joining the Biobank. But right now we don't have funding for recruiting new participants. So the Ministry of Social Affairs, the government, is well aware that people want to join, and they hopefully will find funding in the near future, or we might work with private sector and create a public-private partnership. So we're open to finding different solutions and hope to expand soon.
How does it personalize healthcare for individuals?
Right now, it has been both clinical studies where we recall biobank participants based on findings. So it can be monogenic findings in genes with high hereditary risk for cancer or cardiovascular disease. But we've also done a few clinical studies on a new thing called polygenic risk scores, which is more relevant in the broader population. So these more rare genetic findings are there in 1 in 150, 1 in 200. But when we look at these polygenic risk scores, when we focus on the 10% with a higher broad genetic risk for a disease, we see, for example, 4 times higher cardiovascular mortality. And so we have done these kind of clinical studies where we call in 500 or 1,000 people with really high genetic risk, complex risk for a specific disease, and both for cardiovascular disease and breast cancer. And they have found a lot of more early cases. So then this has actually formed health policy and new guidelines for how to handle high risk for breast cancer in Estonia. So normally it was only the hereditary genetic side of these rare variants and familial forms of breast cancer. But we see that this polygenic risk score can also detect people at higher risk of getting breast cancer at an earlier age than the current screening program. So in Estonia, the breast cancer screening starts at the age of 50. And there is no point in inviting everyone for screening at the age of 30 or 40, but those with a higher genetic predisposition will be invited to start mammography screening from the age of 40. So by using this kind of genetic information, then there's also possibilities for healthcare savings, because there was actually a cost effectiveness analysis associated with this study. And they found that this model of recalling 10% of the population to start their screening at the age of 40 and the rest staying at the age of 50, this would actually be the most cost-effective model for Estonia, and probably applicable to many other European countries also, if not beyond that.
Do you see any regional variation? I mean, on the islands like Saaremaa or anything, are you seeing any regional variations?
No, not yet. But as the cohort is growing, we can start looking into these differences. I remember we looked into this when we were looking at COVID vaccinations, and then we saw that this even smaller island of Hiiumaa was more active and number one in getting their vaccines done. But it was the strongest association was with educational attainment. So those with a higher education, almost everyone had got their vaccines, while those with lower educational levels, the proportion was much lower.
How do you think that the Estonian system could be applied to other nations? And are there any challenges associated with that?
No, I think the UK has also launched the Our Future Health program, which is very similar to what we have done in Estonia. So the UK Biobank, which is exemplary internationally in terms of openness to the scientific community and number of studies conducted based on the data and discoveries as well. The UK Biobank is number one in the world for sure. They never shared data with the biobank participants, and that was never their plan, and they are not planning to. So I think that's why the UK launched this Our Future Health program. There is a clear program and including return of results and doing studies based on returning results to the participants of the study. And in the US, the All of Us research program is also returning results as much as FDA allows them to. So these are definitely picking up on a broader scale.
I think if there's any listeners to this interested and they're based in the UK, the Our Future Health study is still actively recruiting. It has aims to recruit 5 million individuals from the United Kingdom. I think there's comfortably over 1 million individuals that have already submitted information and had some blood samples taken for that project, but it's a broad aim to try and feed that information back in a very similar form to what Lily and the team are doing in Estonia.
Has there been interest from other places in what you're doing in Estonia? I mean, have you been contacted by other people to give them pointers?
Yeah, absolutely. Both in terms of how we set up the biobank, return of results, but most recently we also get contacted by a lot of people who are interested in our preliminary data with PacBio sequencing, and they want to hear more about our selection criteria and so on. So it's very interested. Like, people are interested in very different things.
Are companies interested in the data that you provide or that you have as well?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, pharma companies are interested, and other biobanks have found models and ways of starting public-private partnerships with consortia of pharma companies and so on. So we're still in a phase of evaluating this and figuring out the best model for Estonia.
And could you tell me a bit about the partnership with PacBio, how that came about and the role that you're playing?
We were speaking to several sequencing companies once we got the funding to sequence 10,000 genomes. We just evaluated different technologies and the same samples on different platforms, and based on the comparisons that we did, we really found that in our hands with biobank samples, we found the best quality in the data from PacBio. And as I mentioned, because we want to return results to individuals and we want this to be as accurate as possible, and we don't want to miss any parts of the genome, we want complete whole genomes. So these were really the main points which made us pick PacBio.
From the PacBio side, we were really keen to collaborate with Lily and the Estonian Biobank team for all the reasons that have been described so far. It's really an exemplar project, allowing the feedback of information back to participants. And I think that's a really important part of this sort of big science, that both the research scientists benefit from the quality of the data, but the individuals that are participating with their time and energy and biological specimens get a benefit from it directly too, where possible.
Is AI making some of the connections between genetics and disease and treatments easier and faster?
Yes, it's in the early stages, but I'm sure we will get there. So I have a postdoc in our group who's working on different generative AI models in genomics and together with the health data. So we're using it on 2 layers. So one is trying to find associations, and the other one is we used to have a manual way of extracting drug side effects from free text medical records. So it was search, of course, automated search, but then we had medical students who had to validate, and then we did a new machine-based learning and restarting this and then validating it again. And now these large language models are just revolutionizing the whole thing, and they seem to be better than our long and tedious process in extracting these free text, abbreviated, full of typos, and no matter how difficult the text is that the doctors write, seems like these AI models can actually pick them up.
AI models that maybe can read doctors' handwriting. That sounds like a great step forward.
Is that an international thing? I don't know whether are they the same in Estonia? Can you read doctors' writing in Estonia?
Well, yeah, I think that's a thing of the past since all of it is digital now.
That's true.
But still, they use a lot of abbreviations and they mix Latin and Estonian, and it's not an easy task to automate.
Interesting. And I think here at PacBio, we're using AI ourselves. We've actually got a very active and long-standing collaboration with part of Google called Google Health, who have been working with us, leveraging their experience in AI and machine learning to help extract very clean data from our systems. We measure these polymerases going around DNA molecules at millions of DNA fragments simultaneously, and their AI tools are helping us understand that and really report back very clean, accurate sequencing data. So I think it's going to have a positive impact all the way across the biotech industry as a whole. Lots and lots of opportunities, but as Lily says, I think we're still in the very early stages of seeing the benefits.
Sure. Is what you're doing at PacBio for the Estonian National Biobank similar to what you're doing for other projects, or is it very different?
We have a lot of different uses of our DNA sequencing technology, but there are certain other projects around the world that are similar. I think Lily already mentioned the All of Us project in the United States, for example, and we're an active part of that project too. Our DNA sequencing technology is being used to generate genomes in that sample. And for those that aren't familiar with that project, that's looking at individuals of different ethnic background in the United States. And our long-read DNA sequencing technology has particular benefits in that sort of setting because we're not necessarily reliant on just aligning little short DNA fragments back to a reference and trying to work out where the variations are. The longer DNA fragments that we have help us understand the diversity of genomic variation that often occurs with people of non-European descent. So lots of projects like that going on around the world, lots of groups around the world considering and thinking about starting projects. And as Lily says, I think she's been traveling the world recently, talking to many groups in that space that are looking to what they're doing in Estonia as a model of how other groups may move forward.
And how will the relationship between PacBio and the Estonian National Biobank develop moving forward?
Well, I think it's been great so far, and what we really appreciate most is really the technical support, and the bioinformatics team at PacBio has really helped us in processing the data in how we want to and answering very, very specific questions that we have in terms of pharmacogenetics. These drug metabolizing enzymes are highly similar to each other and complex on a different level compared to many other genes. So we need to be very specific, and these long reads are really helping us in distinguishing variants that we could not have picked up with other technology that we have used so far. So this has been a great partnership to really get this best results and really accurate results out of our data. We really appreciate it, and yeah, we have just started, so
I think that goes both ways as well. We really appreciate the scientific insights from the Estonia team, looking at the data that we're producing and helping us improve and continue to iterate on the software tools that we also provide to help analyzing the data and extracting those biological insights. So lots more to learn as we continue to scale up, and we need to continue to drive down the price and increase the throughput and make these things more accessible globally. And I'm sure we'll be doing that in partnership with the Estonia team as well.
Nice when we don't have to build everything ourselves from scratch, so it's really helpful.
And how do you see, obviously everything evolves, how do you see the future of the biobank developing?
We want to go in two directions. One is to expand the biobank with more participants, but we also want to go deeper. So we want to sequence all biobank participants, so all 200,000 genomes sequenced. And we want to get other layers of data, proteomics, and with PacBio, we're already getting the epigenetics. So that's also something we want to look into, and many, many other layers of data that we could generate and get a better picture of human biology and genetic variation and its effects on so many different traits.
I think we're at the early stages. The team in Estonia have done hundreds of genomes already, but a long way to go in the aim of sequencing 10,000. but we're excited to uncover all sorts of novel biology in that data set in collaboration. I think there's a multitude of things that we can learn about the human genome with the long accurate sequences that we've got that allow us to get into bits of the genome sequence at a level of fidelity that we haven't had with other technologies in the past. And I'm sure there's a lot that we can uncover through that.
Yeah, we're also excited to definitely want to explore what we've been missing so far in other data sets that we have. And as I mentioned, we're also excited about the epigenetics, because I think that's also something people are very interested in on a personal level too. Like the new things around epigenetic clocks, like how are people aging, and there are some great markers that can be quite accurate in terms of high correlation with a person's biological age. And how is that different from your chronological age? And how could you then reverse that pattern? And with better lifestyle choices, higher physical activity, better diets, we could maybe use that as well for inspiring people and motivating people to take better charge of their health, which is definitely a big goal we have at the Biobank, to really use this genetic data and then future epigenetic data to improve public health.
Yeah, I think the epigenetics could be really interesting. All those people that on their health survey say they don't smoke, but in the epigenetic profile, we can actually see signatures of DNA and epigenetic changes as a result of long-term smoking, for example. So understanding how those data types play out with one another, I think is going to be really exciting over time.
It's a fascinating topic, that one, with so many implications, not just in Estonia, but also in many other countries. Hopefully something that can save lives, as well as streamline and support health services around the world. Don't forget to check out the latest news and articles over at Labiotech.eu, and I hope wherever in the world you are, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.